A friendship forged in music. A partnership in its 4th decade. A lifetime in pursuit of the perfect song. And a community built along the way. 14 studio albums and another one in the wings. The band is Skydiggers. This is Employee of the Myth. Track 3, Hide Your Light. And now, in conversation with Jane Gowan of the Music Buddy podcast, Andy Maize and Josh Finlayson. Skydiggers.
Hide your light, bide your time. Would you see this as a Skydiggers mantra almost, that phrase? I mean, how did you come up with those lyrics and what were you thinking at the time about this? Because it is something that you guys are very good at, being humble, being modest, deferring to others, shining the light on other people.
That phrase was a phrase I came across reading an article at some point, and it just resonated with me, and I just thought I obviously must have written it down. And the verses to that song had been around for a while, and I know I had played Andy the verse and the feel of the verse, and the lyric, the first verse. I remember writing it when our friend Gord Downey was sick, and around the time that the Hip did their last tour, and then he did the Secret Pass stuff. Like, it was all through that period. That was just something I was thinking about, like how he connected to so many people through that time, and what that connection was. And I remember playing that part of it to Andy at some point, and it was, like I'd sort of gotten it to a certain point, as you often do with songs, and then I just didn't know what else to do with it. And then during the pandemic, I think is when I read the Hide Your Light, Bide Your Time line, and I thought maybe those could work together. So that's how the song evolved, and and I think what appealed to me about that expression as well, part of what resonated with me was it was as much about community as you asked about our, being humble, and I mean, whether that's true, I don't know, but I think we have been very fortunate to be part of, a much larger community of songwriters and musicians and artists, and so I think that and you mentioned Gord as well, also shining the light on other people, and was always so great at that. I think that's a sign, those, when you have people around you doing good things, it brings the best out in you. Mm-hmm.
And you played in his band for many years. Yeah. You knew him very well.
Almost all the solo stuff that he did, and that was a great experience for me, because it was very different from the Skydiggers. It was much kind of looser, and it intuitive, and it could come off the rails at times, but that was sort of part of its charm, or not, depending if you liked it or didn't. But it certainly was a great experience and education for me.
That Country of Miracles band was
what a band,
really cool.
Yeah.
You have created this community, not only of the people you play with, but also your audience members. I mean, it's become such a large sort of family in a way. Each relationship has just created something that makes the band more special in a way. Someone like Jessie Bell Smith, who's on this track, right, singing harmony with you, Josh. Mm-hmm. I mean, just the addition of her, just when she came in, what that added. And what was your decision on this song to bring the two of you doing vocals all the way through on this one?
Well, we really wanted to get Jessie onto this record because she's a big part of, and has been a big part of, what we've been doing for the past almost 15 years. But because we recorded the lion's share of the record out in BC, it's mostly just Josh and me singing on the song. So we actually recorded Jessie's vocal here in Toronto, because we really did want to get her on the record, and this was the best song to get her vocal on.
Hide your light, bide your time.
How do you decide what songs you're going to sing lead, Josh? I mean, because you know, Andy sings the majority of the songs. So how do you decide when it's a Josh song?
You know, I often wrote songs that I couldn't sing, so that sort of would sometimes determine that.
Right.
And whether Andy wanted to sing it or could sing it as well would determine it. And then he would often encourage me to sing songs as well. So I mean, I don't know that there's any formula for it, but I think it just ends up happening that way. And that's what I would say, yeah.
Josh used to do it more frequently than he does now, but he often used to write songs where he'd kind of sing under his breath in falsetto.
Oh.
Well, I think part of that was also when certainly around Desmond's Hip City, my kids were young, and I always have this great memory of, sitting in the dining room, and our living room was sort of just off to the side, and my kids would be watching television, and I would be working on a song, and I'd be sort of quiet in the background, and the television would get a little bit louder, and then I'd have to sing louder, and eventually the television would be at stun level, and my daughter would come in. Can you knock it off?
Everyone's a critic.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's not, again, I think if you're a songwriter and someone sings your songs, that's like the biggest compliment you can have. And I'm very grateful that Andy's sung songs that I've written, Jesse sung songs that I've written. And Andy's really encouraged me to sing as well, which was not always my comfort zone. But it's become a little bit more that way now. So it's good to have that opportunity to express that part of my my songwriting as well.
To dance, to sing, and soar on the tip of a wing, to hold the world by a string, and dare to be anything, to reach beyond the restless need to move on, the search for where we belong begins before we are gone. Hide your light.
I mean, this song also talks about knowing yourself and trusting your intuitions. And the two of you've gained this great trust over the years with each other, the musical and personal trust. How much do you defer to each other musically? And can you tell what the other person's going to think when you're starting to hash ideas out, or do you still surprise each other?
I don't know. That I haven't really thought about it. I think we surprise each other, but I don't know. I mean, we've been married for how long now, Josh? About 35, 36 years. We've been partners.
So there must be some.
I've spent as much time with Josh over the past 36 years as I have with my wife.
Yeah.
And probably
it's a problem. I think that sometimes it's when you don't say anything that is even more impactful than when you say something. I mean, that's maybe a lesson that you learn as you get older too, that sometimes saying less is better because things tend to reveal themselves. If something's not working, it becomes apparent. You don't have to. And that's maybe the biggest lesson in the creative process is, if you don't like something, by all means express that you don't like it, but it's eventually going to probably become pretty apparent that it's not that good an idea or it's not the right way to go. And it's, I guess, kind of picking your spots and letting someone find that as well. That's also important. That I know this for sure. I could come in with an idea and Andy would say, I really like that, or I don't know that he would say I don't like it, but it just may not resonate with him. But sometimes that's a good thing to hear too, because it either means that if I really think it's a good idea, I'll make sure that I convince him that it's a good idea, or it makes me go and find a different way to express that idea. You know what I mean? I think it's, and maybe that's where the trust lies. Like, he's certainly not required to like every idea of mine or vice versa, you know, like that's okay. And that's okay, you know, like that's part of the process, you know. Ideas will eventually, if they're good, they will establish themselves accordingly.
They'll float to the top.
Yeah.
And certainly for me, it's been a lifetime of trying to shut up, you know, because I tend to speak before I think. Luckily, you wake up every day and you learn something new, or you try to. And what Josh just said about, you know, just sometimes you just hold on. The best thing is you're constantly being surprised by sometimes what you think is that's okay turns out to be great, you know. And so why would you quash the idea before it's had an opportunity to?
You just haven't
reveal
just because
itself.
you haven't recognized it doesn't mean it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about Gord Downey earlier. You know, he could see the value or something in that idea that I often couldn't. You know, in watching him work, and that was sort of a remarkable trait, and it could evolve. And he had sort of, he could have. I mean, I you know, in the solo stuff, that was my experience with him, but. You know, he would often gravitate to the diamond in the rough sort of idea, and that would draw him to something, and that, you know, eventually it would reveal itself, or not as well. Like sometimes it just wasn't, it didn't work. But to be open to that, I think that's a good thing. It's easy to say no, right? Like it's easy not to like something. It's easy to dismiss something. You know,
critical.
It sounds like it's that whatever, you know, like it's a cliche, it's this, it's that. That will reveal itself in time.
As this song will, and people will start to listen, and you're bringing out this new music, and people want to hear it, but they also want to default to the older stuff too, right?
Sure.
So it's about how do you get people to want to listen and to convince them that this is good and worth listening to, and you should play it every day, kind of thing. I guess that's partly why we're
Sundays.
doing this. Yeah. So maybe we could give them a taste of this song and.
Hide your light, bide your time. Don't give in to poison mind. Love will find its way to dance, to sing, and soar on the tip of a wing, to hold the world by a string and dare to be anything, to reach beyond the restless need to move on, the search for where we belong begins before we are gone. Hide your light, bide your time. Don't give in to poison minds. Love will find its way and dare to be anything. Love will find a way.
That song is it's so motivating. I mean, it's about keeping your spirits high and your momentum strong. And do you think that's becoming harder in these times? Like, can we keep our spirits high? There's so much going on in the world. You talk about poisoned minds, I see that as the rise of the alt-right and things like that. Are you thinking of those when you're writing songs like this?
Well, in this case, that for sure, that was like very much during the pandemic. That's where, and like just the misinformation or and certainly through the Trump administration. I mean, just all the stuff that you're just bombarded with. What was the expression? I always loved that, the business of outrage. Like that was that was an expression that I again kind of resonated with me, and it becomes such a distraction to what really we should be addressing as a society at times. And again, like these were sort of two separate thoughts that came together. I described the verses came from a different place initially, but there was lots of time to work on songs during the pandemic. So
yeah,
this was born out of that, I guess.
Your vocal on this is wonderful, and there's other songs you've sung in the past, like that song Horseshoe Bay, which is it talking about your bass player Ron Macy? Is that one?
Well,
or tell me about that one, because
our first trip as a band to BC with Ron, I remember, like he was his hometown. He had grown up in North Van. I remember specifically him taking us. We drove to Horseshoe Bay, and we ended up at a bar, close to where the ferries are. But it was a spot that he would go as a kid, and just talked about it. So seeing Vancouver through his eyes, and at that point, he hadn't lived there for probably
Long
10 or
time.
15, 20 years.
Yeah.
It had been a while. So he was nostalgic for Vancouver, and this would have been 1990, 91, and at that point it had changed considerably as well. And you ask, is it about Ron? Often Andy said this too, and I think this isn't uncommon. You write a song thinking it's about one thing at the time, but more often it's about yourself.
of course, yeah.
And so I would say this is more about me than it is about Ron. But I obviously make reference to both Vancouver and Toronto in this one. But yeah.
And now, from 2003's Bittersweet Harmony, here's Horseshoe Bay with Josh and Andy.
You're a long way from North Vancouver. You're a long way from home. A long way from the choices you made so long ago. Is that what's haunting you? As you stare out onto Horseshoe Bay. I'm a long way from North Toronto. I'm a long way from home. A long way from the choices I made so long ago. Is that what's haunting me? As I'm stuck in traffic near King and Bay. All we're proving is we're bound for losing all we made. All we're proving is we're bound for losing everything.
Thanks, guys. I love that song. What a great version. I did kind of miss the trumpet solo, though.
The album is called Hide Your Light. The band is Skydiggers, and this has been Employee of the Myth. Employee of the Myth is hosted by Jane Gowan and recorded at Blue Rodeo's Woodshed Studios in Toronto, Ontario. The podcast is engineered by Tim Vesely and mixed by Jane Gowan. If you enjoyed this conversation, please rate, review, share, subscribe, and play it loud. My name is Joel Stewart. Thanks for listening.
Don't look to me for the answer. I don't know nothing anymore. I'll do my best in the meantime and wonder what it's been for. Je t'aime toujours, mon amour. Je t'aime toujours, mon amour.